What's good? It's Woog. Vasily Lomachenko returned to the ring and defeated JAMAINE Ortiz. And he defeated him 7 rounds to 5, 8 rounds to 4, and 9 rounds to 3 on the official judges' scorecards. I don't agree with the 9 rounds to 3. 8 rounds to 4, maybe. 7 rounds to 5. I had it more 8 rounds to 4. Here's the thing. Vasily Lomachenko looked pretty good. It's hard to tell whether he is at 100%. I don't want to take anything away from JAMAINE Ortiz and how competitive he made this fight. You're going to get different schools of thoughts here. I think some people are going to say, Vasily Lomachenko might be 80 to 85% of where he was just in his last 2 fights against Nakatani and against Richard Comey. They might think that they saw a little bit of degradation in abilities relative to where he was, again, in his last fights. Then you're going to have the others who think, no, Vasily Lomachenko is as good as he was. He just fought a big, athletic, quick, determined lightweight in JAMAINE Ortiz. And Vasily Lomachenko, obviously coming off nearly a year off. He was in Ukraine for much of this year during, the Russian invasion. I thought Vasily Lomachenko looked pretty good. I don't know if his foot feints are as quick as they were. I don't think his feet move in the way that they did when he was beating everybody from Gary Russell Jr. through Nicholas Walters all the way to, Luke Campbell. I don't know if Vasily Lomachenko's feet are on that level still. I think his hands are. I think he's as physical as he's ever been. He looks strong. Like, there were instances where JAMAINE Ortiz looked like the stronger physical fighter. There were other moments where Vasily Lomachenko looked like the stronger fighter. Now, I had JAMAINE Ortiz winning like 3 of the first 4 rounds here. You could argue 2-2, but I know that it was either Timothy Bradley or Andre Ward. I think it might have been Bradley who had Ortiz up 3 rounds to 1 after 4. You could go either way with that, 3-1 or 2-2. But JAMAINE Ortiz was just looking very quick. His punches were coming out a little unpredictably, and in 2-3 punch, sometimes 4-5 punch combinations, where he was backing Lomachenko up, like in those first few rounds. And you're watching this thinking, okay, what is the adjustment that Lomachenko is going to make here? Because it's looking like he's fighting a noticeably bigger guy who is throwing as quickly, if not more quickly, than Lomachenko. And the guy looks, like he's got a lot of energy. Now, this was also a concern watching those first few rounds because you saw Ortiz's punch output. I thought it was adrenaline. I thought somebody's going to need to reel him in a little bit, like reduce the punch output so you could sustain that through the middle and late rounds. But, I mean, you don't want to argue with what's working at the same time. And if somebody seems motivated and is basically seizing their moment, saying, no, this is it. I can't save anything. I just have to fight as hard as I can fight round after round. Well, again, it worked in the first half of the fight. Lomachenko, to my eyes, took control of the fight in the second half. And it was interesting because it looked like Lomachenko was going to have to do all kinds of, he was going to have to exhibit a lot of craft to turn this one around, right? Because there was a moment even 2/3 of the way into the fight where JAMAINE Ortiz went to southpaw, which he does sometimes. So we had Lomachenko, the southpaw, versus the, traditionally orthodox JAMAINE Ortiz. Well, Ortiz switched to southpaw when he needed to switch things up. And then it took Lomachenko another round to kind of figure out how to deal with that. Because, after maybe 6 rounds, or let's say 7 rounds, I think that the right way to score after 7 rounds would have been JAMAINE Ortiz probably 4 rounds to Lomachenko's 3 rounds. But what we saw Lomachenko start doing was, he just had to open up. Like, there were times where JAMAINE Ortiz would hit Lomachenko like with 2 or 3 punches. They would get in tight, and then he would just like knock Lomachenko back, and it was like, whoa. So he's throwing the punches, the fast punches that a lot of them were connecting, because sometimes Lomachenko would just start putting his, guard up and letting, JAMAINE Ortiz just let his bullets fly. And maybe some of that was to let him get those punches off so he would wear down over time. But sometimes when Lomachenko would put up the high guard, some of those JAMAINE Ortiz punches were cutting through. They were getting through and landing, like even around the guard to the side of Lomachenko's face right here and kind of below his ear. So Lomachenko was taking more of a beating than he normally takes. Yes, that big old swelling was due apparently to JAMAINE Ortiz's tape around his wrist area. But again, Lomachenko was looking like he was getting busted up and just hit more cleanly with more punches than we normally see Lomachenko get hit with. So Lomachenko started punching between Ortiz's punches. So Ortiz would open up with like 3 to 5 punches, kind of in a, as online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer would put it, in an ambush type of way. But then after he lets those 4 or 5 punches go, Vasily Lomachenko would basically stay with him, walk him back as he's throwing punches. So he would throw a few punches, JAMAINE Ortiz would move or block or, try to answer with a couple punches of his own or try to tie up, and Lomachenko would immediately be right back in there throwing another 3 to 4 punches. So Lomachenko seemed like at a point he made his mind up. I don't want to use the term go to war in light of what's taking place in the Ukraine in this context, but Lomachenko really had to bite down on the mouthpiece and basically say, okay, almost every opportunity I get where JAMAINE Ortiz is not throwing punches, I'm going to throw my punches then. And I'm going to mix them up to the body and up top. And by the way, we saw JAMAINE Ortiz go to Lomachenko's body as well. Like, this was a very competitive fight. It was interesting, but I feel like after watching the 12 rounds, you saw how much JAMAINE Ortiz was fading, especially in those last 2 rounds, where JAMAINE Ortiz kind of needed those rounds, but it looked like the writing was on the wall, that JAMAINE Ortiz didn't have the energy that he did in the first half of the fight, and that Lomachenko had figured something out in the way that he was deploying his punches and almost using JAMAINE Ortiz's output as a kind of like a barometer, like, okay, let's cover up and then let's go to work. So it seemed like JAMAINE Ortiz started throwing fewer combinations in the championship rounds here. So I think that was the difference, and that gave Lomachenko the edge on the scorecards. Again, you could have gone 7 rounds to 5. You could have gone 8 rounds to 4. I don't agree with the 9 rounds to 3. But Lomachenko is back, and he did do what he needed to do to win this fight. JAMAINE Ortiz, I think, is going to have a hell of a career at lightweight as well, as long as he's able to make lightweight. Like, JAMAINE Ortiz is a pretty big kid, and I mean, wouldn't you love to see, hypothetically, JAMAINE Ortiz versus Isaac Cruz? Now, I know one of those guys is PBC and JAMAINE Ortiz is top ranked, but just imagine how fun of a fight that would be to watch. JAMAINE Ortiz versus Isaac Cruz, or JAMAINE Ortiz versus Masayoshi Nakatani. That would be a fun one. By the way, I'm kind of lobbying for Nakatani being Shakur Stevenson's initiation into the 135-pound division. I just think that would be a very good and interesting test and opponent for Shakur Stevenson at 135, Nakatani. But yeah, JAMAINE Ortiz, I think he's got a future, and I think he's got the ability to beat some, highly ranked lightweights right now. Like, he just has he's just a very athletic puncher. And yes, he could have been a little bit more, deliberate or a little bit more cautious, I would say, on how he distributed that energy across the 12 rounds. But, I think it served him well to win those early rounds. I think for JAMAINE Ortiz to have had a chance against Lomachenko, he would have had to have banked some of those early rounds. But I think that it's tough to tell whether we are still dealing with 100% Lomachenko. I would say no, not 100%, maybe 80 to 85% prime Lomachenko here, but it's still good enough to beat a lot of very good fighters. And, the question here now is, does Vasily Lomachenko now get the shot against the undisputed champion Devin Haney? That's going to be up to Devin and Bill Haney on whether he stays at 135 and is able to, basically, if they're able to make the fight, business-wise, this is going to be an easier fight to make, I believe, business-wise, if both fighters want it, because they're both on top rank. And this was kind of, the plan that you could see developing even as early as Devin Haney was made the guy to fight George Kambosos once Vasily Lomachenko had decided to stay in Ukraine. So we'll see if Devin Haney and them, formally agree to this 135-pound title defense against Lomachenko, because let's face it, Devin Haney, he looks like he's a big lightweight who everybody saw him on the scale in that Kambosos rematch. He looked gaunt, where your face looks a little bit sunken in. So if he's able to, commit to and make the 135-pound limit, I think we've got a heck of a fight on our hands. Now, I can see Devin Haney banking some early rounds against Vasily Lomachenko. We're going to dive deeper. If they make that fight, we're going to analyze the heck out of that matchup, and I can't wait. I hope that Devin Haney's got one more lightweight fight in him, because this is a legacy fight if you're fighting a legend like Lomachenko. It's one thing to beat a George Kambosos, even a Jorge Linares and a Jojo Diaz. It's a totally different thing to beat a, we'll say, near prime Vasily Lomachenko. So I hope that fight gets made, and it's going to be interesting because it would be easy to say, well, JAMAINE ORTIZ won some of the early rounds against Lomachenko here and, kind of out-physicaled him and moved him around and backed him up with combinations. Well, Devin Haney doesn't throw as many punches as JAMAINE ORTIZ. And more specifically, he doesn't throw as long of combinations as JAMAINE ORTIZ. Ortiz will put 3 to 5, even 6 punches together. Devin Haney is more 1-2, maybe 1-2-3. But yeah, hats off to both Lomachenko and JAMAINE ORTIZ. JAMAINE ORTIZ, we knew that this could be an interesting test. Now, I picked Lomachenko to win, but I picked Lomachenko to win by a larger margin than what I saw take place in the ring. I thought that Lomachenko would win by like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3, and yes, 2 of the 3 judges did have it 8-4, 9-3, but I don't feel like that's what I saw in this fight. I saw a 7 rounds to 5 or maybe 8 rounds to 4 fight. I thought that Lomachenko would win like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3. So close, but JAMAINE ORTIZ, I'll be honest, he kind of outperformed my expectations slightly, but we knew that he was going to be an interesting opponent from a physicality, athleticism, and again, determination, motivation standpoint, because this was JAMAINE ORTIZ's shot. This is it, right? This is the huge opportunity. Now, I think that he's going to get big opportunities in the future, but this is one of those just moments that you have to seize. And I think that he did everything he could do to win. I think that experience won the day for Vasily Lomachenko. But from a physical standpoint, I think that Lomachenko is just right on that edge right now. The special abilities that he had throughout his career, I think we're going to start seeing those diminish. It starts with the legs. His hands are still good, and he was still putting fast combinations together. And to be fair, his foot feints were still there. He was still like doing the doo-doo, where you draw the reaction not only with your shoulders and with your hands, but with your feet. He still had some of that. It just wasn't as quick, and he wasn't as quick in getting out of the pocket. Like, if you're gonna feint your way into the pocket, you got to get out of the pocket and not back up in a straight line. Do it at an angle. Vasily Lomachenko was the master of that, to where he didn't even have to get out of the pocket in most cases. He could just kind of sidestep and just throw another 3 to 5 punches, sidestep and take another angle. He doesn't seem like he is as able to do that right now as he was a year, 2 years ago. But maybe that is a byproduct of this, kind of layoff that he had. And, and his return fight was against somebody who might end up proving to be, let's say, like a top 5 to top 7, perhaps, lightweight in the game. We'll see going forward. But yeah, I thought Lomachenko looked very good. I thought he showed a ton of heart, ton of grit, ton of experience. Like, it just seemed like he knew that this was going to be challenging after a few rounds. You could see him going back to the corner, the way that Anatoly Lomachenko was addressing him in the corner. It just looked like he knew he had a mega task on hand, and he responded like a true champion. So yeah, we'll see how the lightweight division shapes up after that. But yeah, Lomachenko did what he had to do, and I want to know your guys' thoughts on Lomachenko versus JAMAINE ORTIZ. I was entertained by this fight. After 4 or 5, to be honest, I was kind of thinking, okay, maybe Lomachenko's experience is going to win the day and he's going to turn things around. But I kind of thought that I was about to see Lomachenko lose. We knew that JAMAINE ORTIZ was throwing a ton of punches to where he could wear himself out. But man, he was winning a few of those first rounds where Lomachenko looked so much smaller than JAMAINE ORTIZ, where you might be thinking, uh-oh, You know what I mean? But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Loma versus Ortiz in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you were into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.